Stacey Murphy here with an answer to a question I get often. How much food can you actually feed your family from a small garden box, something like one that you see here? People want to know how much dedicated space do they need in order to feed their family. This is a question that comes up a lot. And it sort of depends on how big your family is and also what your family is eating. So garden beds might just change your diet based on how much you can grow in small spaces. So let me give you some examples. So this is a garden bed behind me that's 3 foot by 6 foot. It's a little bit smaller than your average bed. I like 3 feet wide because I can reach the center. My arms are smaller, but some people prefer 4 feet wide. I like 3 feet wide. There's no particular reason why this one is 6 feet long. It just so happens that that's how it was built. So how much food can I grow here? Well, what I'm not going to grow here are all my grains because grains take up a lot of space. You get very little amount of yield in terms of grain per square foot. So in a small garden bed, you're probably not going to feed yourself the grains. You're probably also not going to feed yourself all the corn that you eat for the summer. These small garden beds, they just aren't made for that. Corn takes up a lot of space. Another crop that you might not grow is okra. Okra is a big, tall plant. It's fabulous. It produces great fruit. But the amount of fruit that you get per plant is small compared to how much space it takes up. So what kinds of crops would you grow in a small garden bed in order to feed your family? So let's look at just one family or one group of plants first. So greens. I love greens, and you can grow so many greens in small spaces. So here I have just transplanted a bunch of different kales, some purple kales, and some green kales, and in other beds I have some other different curly kales as well. I also have Swiss chard around the garden and celery. Those are my 3 favorite greens. So how much space does it take for me to feed myself with those greens? How much space would I need? So let's think about this. There are 21 meals in a week, and I cook a lot of my meals at home. I don't cook necessarily all of them. So let's just say for rounding's sake, let's say that I cook 20 meals at home out of 21. You know, 1 meal out a week. So let's say I'm cooking 20 meals at home. I like to serve myself between 3 and 5 leaves off of a plant, depending on how big the plant is, how hungry I am, what the recipe is that I'm cooking, what meal of the day it is. Maybe breakfast, it's only 1 or 2 leaves, and then as I ramp through the day, it gets more and more. So it depends, but on average, 3 to 5. So for now, let's just say 3. So the reason why I chose 3 will become apparent in just a moment. So 3 leaves and 20 meals, how much space do I need? So take a look at this bed behind me. If I were to feed myself just Swiss chard is something that doesn't take up that much space. I plant it every 4 to 6 inches, and I harvest it pretty deeply each week. And I harvest it down to just 3 leaves on the plant, and it keeps springing back more and more greens. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see beginners make is that they don't harvest enough. They're afraid that if they harvest it, it's not going to come back. So Mother Nature, she likes us to cut and prune, and she grows right back. It makes space for more food to grow in. So my Swiss chard, I'm harvesting weekly, and I harvest a whole bunch of Swiss chard at a time, along with kale, along with celery. I mix them all together in my greens. But let's just take Swiss chard as an example because it's easy. So I plant this about 4 to 6 inches apart, and each week I'm getting about 3 leaves. Interesting, because each meal I'm eating about 3 leaves. So what that means is that I need a row. Let's say I have a single row of Swiss chard and a single row that's 6 inches wide. And how many plants do I need? Well, I need 20. I need 1 for each meal because each week I'm harvesting about 3 leaves off of that plant. So what that would mean is that I would need 6 inches wide on this bed, about double. So I would need about 1 foot wide by 6 foot long, about 6 square feet, to give me my 3 to 4 leaves of Swiss chard each week. So that's not a whole lot of space if I really love Swiss chard and that's my green of choice. Another green that works that way is celery. I love planting celery and Swiss chard together, and they make really good companions for cooking too. So I could fill this little swath of space here that you see with Swiss chard and celery, and that would feed me all of my greens for every meal. So that's how much space it takes to grow greens. Not that much, right? So a couple notes. You can scale this up to fit your family. Let's say you have a family of 4. You probably need this whole box in order to grow enough greens for your entire family if you're doing a lot of cooking at home. You have to grow maybe double this if you want to create sauerkraut and maybe can that for the winter months, right? And then the other note is that it all depends on temperatures too. So when I'm growing here in this box, I was growing in colder temperatures. It was maybe 50 degrees Fahrenheit outside during the day sometimes, and it was down to 40 degrees at night sometimes. But most days it was like 60 during the day and 50 at night. That's when I was getting about 3 leaves per plant each week. But during the peak season, when it's like a good, awesome, 75 degrees, 80 degrees during the day, sometimes I'm getting more per week off of these plants. And so you'll see that depending on the temperature in your area, you'll get more food. There's kind of a sweet spot right at 75 degrees where your plants will really thrive and produce a lot of greens. And of course, you could go vertical in these beds too to get another crop in. You could put a trellis down the center, attach it to the wood box on the ends, go vertical, get a whole nother crop of peas or beans or Malabar spinach, which is a really awesome green. And what you want to do when you have that trellis, I like to face my bed south. So that way is south. It's a long ways south. That way when I put a trellis up, when the sun goes east to west and sets, the sun angles work, everything gets sun. And what I like to do is keep the bottom layer of whatever is trellised, the crop that's trellised, keep that bottom layer thin so that sunlight can get through, but then basically above the 12-inch mark, let it grow big and bushy. And that way everything gets equal amounts of sun and you get another layer, this vertical layer. Now for other crops, it takes a little bit more space, but other crops that are possible, you see a row of carrots here, and in the last video, just before this video, last week's video, I talked about harvesting my radishes. There was a row of turnips here, there was a row of radishes here, all that have been harvested. There's about 100 carrots here. So I'm going to pull those out of the ground in the coming weeks, and I'm going to get about 100 carrots out of this bed. So you can grow a significant amount of food, but you have to pick the right crops that are, number one, small crops. They don't take up a lot of space. Crops that are fast so that you can continuously harvest and get new crops in. And then crops that are high yield. So if you're going to grow things that are big and bushy and fruiting like tomatoes, I would go for things that are like cherry tomatoes, things that you can harvest a lot of fruit off of over the course of the season, lots of little pieces of fruit, high yield, versus maybe 1 to 3 big giant tomatoes. I would go for some of those cherry tomatoes if you're looking to feed your family.